This is an Audio Wool original.
This episode of Frightday is brought to you by Spring-Heeled Jack Coffee. You need great coffee. Jack delivers. Visit springhieldjack.coffee.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you'd like to support us, go to patreon.com/Frightday.
Is Frightday. I'm your host, Byron. Are you still eating, Kelly? Should I not go yet? Okay, just
What are you talking about?
I didn't know if you had food in your mouth still.
I don't do that.
All right, bullshit. The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. In front of that other dilapidated post-Katrina drug house, some folks have it all. A wife, kids, stable job, and they take it for granted. Others selfishly move through life concerned only about themselves. Both, that is, until those lifestyles are threatened. We'll talk about that and a hot new designer drug hitting the streets of NOLA tonight as we review Justin Benson and Aaron Moorehead's Synchronic. And this is it. The end of a long series about a short life where you'll leave with our thoughts on who took hers. It's the conclusion of Marilyn Monroe, formerly known as Marilyn Monroe. In this week's edition of Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies, I'm joined tonight by Kelly.
Monroe, send Marilyn Monroe.
And Sam can't make it because he's selling synthetic drugs at the convenience store again.
I actually don't think that's true.
Can we talk about Nick Cage for a second?
Oh, are we talking about his new show?
No, what's his new show? I was just saying, in general, we can talk about anything, Nick Cage. But I did watch a new trailer of his film, Willy's Wonderland.
Oh, I've heard about that, yes.
White Drifter is tricked into a janitorial job at a now-condemned Wally's Wonderland. It's one of those Chuck E. Cheese type places with the animatronic band, and turns out he just may be a sacrifice to some demonic animatronics. This thing looks like a frickin' hoot, but what would you expect? Any less from Nicolas Cage?
Hold on just a second. Have you really not heard about his show about swearing?
Oh, I saw that. I didn't know he had anything to do with it. What is it? The history of swear words?
And now we've come to another fucking episode in our compendium of cuss words, and this one is unique. It is the only one that started out as a first name. Nobody ever named their firstborn Shittard or Fucklin. Excuse me, Fucklin, have you done your homework? Shittard? Inside voice, please. Only Dick holds this distinction. It comes from a name, and that name is Richard. But why Richard? Why not Jeffrey? Hey, you suck my Jeff. Doesn't quite have the same ring to it. What about Daniel? Suck my Dan. See? No. Oh, I know. Suck my Nick. Yeah. Hey, Nick head. Eat a Nick. Don't even think about nicking me over, Nickwad. Yeah, you wish you had B-N-E, Big Nick Energy. Now, I could get used to that. But until I can make Nick happen, we're stuck with Dick.
Yeah, but he walks us through it.
No, I had no idea. I mean,
he's the host of it.
That's fine, Kelly. I haven't seen it. I said that 3 times.
I just think that's the coolest thing that he's doing right now. Cooler than whatever this weird movie is going to be.
So, this looks a lot like something that I know nothing about as well.
Which is what?
You ever hear of a video game called Five Nights at Freddy's?
No.
So
I definitively have not.
It was very popular. It came out in 2014. The kids loved it because it's spooky but kind of lighthearted at the same time, I believe. I
really?
Truly don't know.
Do you know anything about it?
Not really, but I do know that Jason Blum at some point wanted to make it into a feature film way back in 2017, and they were talking about it for a very, 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 very long time. There's a point where Christopher Columbus, not the racist murderer who discovered America.
Didn't discover America.
Sure. The director, Chris Columbus, was going to direct it.
Home Alone.
Yeah. They said that in 2018, and then later that year it was delayed. But this film seems strikingly similar to the plot of Five Nights at Freddy's.
Okay, wait, so have you dug far enough to find out if it is?
So I went and looked at the writer, and he has nothing to do with the writing of the Five Nights at Freddy's. I would love for someone who knows more about this.
This reminds me a little bit of our Behind the Screams this
little
week.
bit, but Games Radar, I agree. GamesRadar.com as well as PC Gamer both say that Willy's Wonderland is just a Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff.
Oh.
That leads me to believe that this is just a straight up blatant ripoff, but it stars a guy named Nick Cage, and this thing looks unhinged. Does he do Hinged anymore?
Never. Although, like, the whole premise for the swearing TV show, it looks almost like a masterpiece theater format of, like, walking through the history of swearing, which sounds kind of hinged.
Yeah. I discovered two upcoming Nick Cage projects that interest me very much. One, pretty obviously, Untitled Joe Exotic Project.
I heard about this, yes.
8-episode miniseries.
And he's playing Joe, right?
Who else would? He looks exactly, like a Joe Exotic type character, and I can't imagine
he does.
him being dolled up like Joe.
Joe's unhinged, he's unhinged, just makes sense.
This other film, though, directed by a guy named Tom Gormican, it's called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Hold on, that's the name of the movie?
Yeah.
The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. So it's a documentary about Nick Cage?
No, but it does star Nick Cage as Nick Cage. A cash-strapped
So it's being John Malkovich?
You know? You're probably closer than you'd think. A cash-strapped Nicolas Cage agrees to make a paid appearance at a billionaire superfan's birthday party, but is really an informant for the CIA since the billionaire fan is a drug kingpin and gets cast in a Tarantino movie.
Okay, so what has this director done before?
Well,
Because this sounds like more fun than A Barrel of Monkeys.
seems like a hoot. He is the he wrote the Ghosted series that I believe is a Fox comedy about ghost hunters that didn't do very well.
Didn't watch it, so can't judge.
A 2014 film called That Awkward Moment.
Nope, that doesn't bode well.
Stars Zac Efron, Michael B. Jordan, and Miles Teller. This seems. I guess I just want to start up a little bit of a Nick Cage appreciation chit chat.
Do we like Nick Cage that much? Have I ever told you about my story with Nick Cage?
No, it better be an
Okay.
actual story with Nick Cage. Like
It is an actual story with Nick Cage. So there's a legend. There's a local legend, Byron, which
Yeah.
I heard pretty close. I heard secondhand. Okay, so I didn't hear it firsthand.
So it's
but
not
it
your
wasn't
story.
thirdhand.
It's not your
So
story.
it's a good story, though. Apparently, a girl that I went to high school with ended up in Vegas, was at some party with Nick Cage, and there was some type of a romantic interlude that was real creepy, weird, awkward.
Great story.
That's the Nick Cage story. Ba-bum-bow.
You know, you did. Yeah. Okay. Pig is also in post-production. A truffle hunter who lives alone in the Oregonian wilderness must return to his past in Portland to search
Hold on,
for his...
Are there truffles in the Oregonian wilderness?
Maybe, but he's searching for his beloved foraging pig after it's kidnapped.
What?
Yeah, because you know they have truffle-sniffing pigs. That's
Right, specific pigs. I just thought that it was only in France. I didn't realize that shit happened in Oregon. God, I like Oregon even more than I realized.
Okay, well, this little segment went really, really well.
You feeling good about it?
Not about as good as our Behind the Screens, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. But you know what? The people,
I feel real good about that. You
people
kidding me?
They're pounding on the door. They're so excited for the new releases, but we want to point them towards the wall of stickers and homemade signs over here. It's time for staff picks.
They say so much, but they never tell you if it's any good.
E.T.'s mom in it?
The Howling, horror, straight ahead.
I mean, this is going to be pretty much the most obvious staff pick I've ever done.
No, you aren't. No, you can't.
I'm going to do it.
Stop it.
One of the best posters in history. A film that came out in the year 1999.
Can't believe you're doing that.
I mean, are you prepared to talk about this with me then as well?
Oh, no. I have a different one. I just think you're a complete coward.
What do you mean? Bringing Out the Dead.
We have a call, Chief. Somebody's bleeding. 44th and A. Saving someone's life is like falling in love. You wonder if you become immortal, as if you've saved your own life as well. But taking credit when things go right doesn't work the other way.
Take things way too seriously, Frank.
You look like you aged about 10 years since I rode with you last.
Come on, Frank. There's blood spilling in the streets. Let's go have some fun.
It was the neighborhood I grew up in, and where I had worked most as a paramedic. And it held more ghosts per square foot than any other.
Why did you kill me, Frank?
I didn't kill you.
No, you didn't, Frank, and thank you, but there's still a couple hours left on our ship.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going with. I thought you were going to go with Benson Moorehead's.
Oh, no, it's too obvious for even me.
Okay, well, sorry.
After a disheartened and haunting career wears him down, New York City paramedic Frank Pierce, played by Nicolas Cage, begins to collapse under the strain of saving lives and witnessing deaths. Through the course of a few nights, 3 co-workers, played by John Goodman, Ving Rhames, and Tom Sizemore, accompany Pierce as he grasps for sanity and pushes to be fired. Before Pierce falls off the edge, he still has a hope when he forms a friendship with a victim's daughter, played by Patricia Arquette, directed by Martin Scorsese, which is how a Hooters waitress pronounced his name at a trivia night I went to. Scorsese?
I don't like that.
Yeah, I just love this film. Not necessarily horror, but I would say it's a supernatural drama, and Wikipedia would agree. It's a goddamn delight. I think it's my favorite Nick Cage.
Really?
He's got the most tired face of a man I've ever seen, next to...
Droopy?
I would say Machinist Bale is probably a little bit more distraught.
God, that just makes me feel nauseous, really, is what that does.
I love Bringing Out the Dead. It's got some parallels to this flick we're talking about tonight, and, I just couldn't not with all my Cage
Okay, well, the
thoughts.
movie that I'm talking about is a way better movie.
Oh, okay.
Takes place in New Orleans.
Oh, all right. You're catching on, Kelly.
Probably one of the most disturbing movies I've ever seen. I'm sure I've talked about it on the show before, but I still don't remember, Byron, if you've ever watched it.
All right.
We've got a Robert De Niro, a Mickey Rourke before awkward facial surgery. None other than the mother of Zoe Kravitz, Lisa Bonet. A movie called Angel Heart.
I'm a private detective, paid to snoop around.
He's dead, Mr. Angel.
Well, you know what they say about slugs. They always leave slime in their tracks. Are you afraid?
Yeah, I'm afraid. I'm a murder suspect already in 2 cases.
Did you kill him?
No, but the cops might think I did.
The Prince of Darkness protects the powerful.
The egg is the symbol of the soul. Did you know that?
Dragonheart?
No, that's, isn't that McConaughey?
I think it's Connery.
Sean?
Yeah, I thought so, but who knows? What are you talking about?
Maybe it's both. Angel Heart.
Okay.
Private investigator is hired by a man who calls himself Louis Cypher to track down a singer named Johnny Favorite, but the investigation takes an unexpected and somber turn. Trigger warnings for people out there, because this is one that definitely warrants a trigger warning. There is some really disturbing sexual violence in this movie, like to a level that was real rough for me to watch.
Yeah.
But the movie is tremendously well done. Really, really, really well done. Super disturbing. Honestly, what flagged it for me, it came out in 1987. It's an old one. What flagged it for me was when we started doing this podcast, Byron, my mom periodically will tell me how gross it is that I watch such disturbing, terrible movies.
Sure.
This was a movie that came up in oh God, movies like Angel Heart. And I was like, oh.
She's got a beef with Angel Heart?
So the backstory with my mother, because I was talking about my dad and how much he loves horror. Before she had kids, my mom actually loved horror. Like, she was a huge Stephen King fan, really got into horror movies. And then, as I've experienced, it's harder to enjoy some things when you have children in the back of your head. But it's a killer movie. Like, it's one of those that crosses over into, it's a phenomenal movie. Mm-hmm. It also happens to be a horror movie.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like both of the films we talked about tonight were like on the edge of horror, but also were well regarded.
Yeah, I mean, this ends up on a lot of people's bests.
Well, it's directed by Alan Parker, who went on to do like Mississippi Burning.
Yeah, he's legit.
Yeah.
He's not fake. He also did Evita. Someday I'll do a...
No?
God, I really need a Wine Kelly.
You need your own
to do
podcast.
A Wine Kelly with Evita singing the whole time.
Like, they have shadow casts where people do a performance in front of a movie for like films like Hedwig and the Angry Inch. You're going to do the podcast version of that where you sing along to a musical?
Let's do it.
No.
Also, Mr. Parker passed away this last year.
Oh,
so
rest in peace, Sir Alan Parker.
In honor of him, Skip Evita, Midnight Express, and Mississippi Burning. Just watch Angel Heart. Actually, the rest of those are really
what
good
about
too.
Bugsy Malone? You're skipping one of your favorites.
Wait, he did Bugsy Malone?
Alan Parker directed Bugsy Malone.
Fuck. Seriously?
Yeah, and you've been talking Bugsy.
Okay, yeah, I should have mourned his death terrifically. That I feel terrible now.
I mean, at this rate, you're going to be doing an Alan Parker podcast.
Well, I was going to say, how about we make Spring Camp Frightday all about Alan Parker?
Absolutely
we watch
not.
Bugsy Malone.
This is a horror podcast.
And Angel Heart.
No.
But it's connected with Angel Heart.
Yeah, we're going to... Okay, no.
No?
No.
Okay.
That's the worst suggestion you've ever made.
I don't think it is.
Well, you're right.
I'm not even sure it makes a top 10 list, Byron.
You know, one of the memories I have of working at a video store, one of the most zen things at the end of my night, stocking the candy in those aisles.
Okay, tell me which candy sold out the fastest.
People love sour things like punch. Sour Punch, kids?
Sour Punch straws?
Straws, mostly, yeah. Goobers don't move.
They shouldn't.
Weird novelty cotton candy is just covered with dust.
I like novelty cotton
All
candy.
right. Well, I don't. What's your go-to candy? We did a whole behind the screams about theater snacks, but
it's interesting for me to think about this with some distance because I have been pretty healthy this month and actually haven't, other than some 90% cacao, has not
back into that cacao. Well, I'm proud of you.
Which was really a challenge this week because our real estate agent sent us really super fancy boutique mini cupcakes on dry ice from New York.
Oh, wow. Like a Gold Belly delivery?
Yeah. Baked by Melissa, by the way.
Wow.
Great little startup business out there. Real good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was really hard. But in terms of candy that I love, one that I think about in my cravings of deprivation.
Cookie dough bites.
Sour cherry balls.
I mean, it's just sugar with a little bit of...
And the thing about those is they can be a little stale and they're still okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You get a stale Swedish Fish and it's no fun. You get a stale Sour Patch. Blech.
You know what you do with Swedish Fish when they're a little bit stale? You sit on them.
Oh, yeah.
Just sit on them for a little bit. Be patient.
I believe that.
Get out of the store.
Okay. Microwave popcorn. That's another thing I haven't had in a while. I used to sell that at the checkout stands, you know?
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
Speaking of checking out.
Oh, God. It's time for her to check out.
It's been a journey, Marilyn. It's been lovely. We've learned so much about you, a beautiful soul, and I hope it rests in peace because that's where we're headed here tonight. Right?
That's where we're headed.
In this week's edition of Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies.
Kelly's Cryptids and Conspiracies.
All right, guys, welcome to the death
Kelly,
of Marilyn
real quick,
Monroe.
I'm going to cut you off.
No?
I want to just take a second and say that I am fully engaged and I'm with you.
Uh-oh.
Not just because I know you'd appreciate it, but because I know, and this is a little meta, I got to make up for the quality of the upcoming review. I was a bit of a mess. When just pull the curtain back, we recorded that earlier. So just got to do my best. I'm sitting here. I got a mug full of beverage, and I'm ready to learn and participate.
Okay, so I really like that. Maybe I should have you do shitty half-assed reviews
It wasn't
every time
half-assed,
before.
It was just kind of scattered. I didn't. You guys will
Honestly,
hear
I
it.
didn't think it was bad at all, but I'm going to let you think it was half-assed to guilt you into listening to what I have to say.
Well, good. And I think you would. I actually don't think you would approve of what I'm drinking. It's later in the day.
It must be an energy drink.
No, it's actually a mug full of Carnation instant breakfast because I had to skip dinner for this.
Why? You eat while we're talking. You're good.
I
Mute
absolutely will
yourself.
not do that. The clock's running out. Let's jump in here.
Oh, you have no fucking idea. Okay. We are now, everyone, in the last day of Marilyn's life. And before I dive into a number of very confusing timelines that I'm going to try and make seem not confusing, I want to give us a little bit of a breakdown of the characters, the players that we're going to be discussing today. Okay? The key player, other than Marilyn, of course, is a woman named Eunice Murray, who was hired by Dr. Greenson, Marilyn's psychiatrist, as her housekeeper. Now, it seems kind of weird that a psychiatrist would hire one of his patients a housekeeper, and it is weird, but we've talked about how unorthodox the situation was with Greenberg and Marilyn. Whether or not there was something going on, which I haven't read enough to really believe that was the case.
Maybe we're getting ripped off by our psychiatrist for not recommending housekeepers for us.
I was going to say, because I have no interest in a little something there. But
no.
If it's the housekeeper part, then yes.
Yeah.
I could use a housekeeper for sure.
What are you drinking? You got Carnation
Water.
Instant... Oh, okay. Well.
No, I'm drinking water out of this fabulous new hydro flask I just bought that's an ombre Pacific Northwest limited edition
If you could see me right
color.
now, I would be doing the move it along hand gesture.
Move it along.
Yeah.
Eunice Murray also has a background in psychology, which is kind of weird.
For a housekeeper.
Right. She also has ties to the Communist Party, though, as we've discussed before, I think that's a red herring, no pun intended. But really, Greenberg was trying to spy on Marilyn through Eunice. It could have been for over-involved patient purposes, like he was really worried about her. That's a little bit far to go. I think any psychiatrist would agree that's crossing the line. Or it could be because he was spying for other reasons. But whatever the case was, he hired Eunice early in 1962 to kind of be a housekeeper for Marilyn / spy. Now, Marilyn knew that she was being bugged, but there was a lot of stuff that people were finding out about her, and word was getting back. Last week, we talked a little bit about her last vacation, quote unquote, to the Royale.
Oh my God. It's just the Royale now? Because you can't pronounce it.
Yeah, the Cal Naval Lodge. I don't know. I just feel like I'm always saying it wrong. It's just such an awkward word.
Pick and commit.
Cal Naval Lodge. She learned that people really have been talking a lot about what she's been saying, things that she thought were private. So Marilyn, there are a lot of rumors about things that happened on the day of her death, but a lot of them surround Eunice. Okay, so we've got Greenberg, her psychiatrist, Eunice, the housekeeper. We've got Bobby Kennedy, who's going to come into play. We've got Peter Lawford, the stooge of the Rat Pack. We've got Norman Jeffries, who's Eunice Murray's son, kind of a handyman that works around the house.
Handyman, also brain surgeon, right?
Obviously. Yeah, no, Eunice's son comes around and does help. But got Pat Newcomb, who is a very, very good friend of Marilyn's and also her publicist.
Uncle of Duke Nukem, right?
Oh, God. You can't do that right now because
I'm really
honestly,
sorry.
like, oh, God. We've got Arthur Jacobs, who is Pat Newcomb's boss. So he's like the head of this publicity agency for which Pat works. And Pat is a she.
Lady Pat.
And Pat is really good friends with Marilyn. Okay? Joe DiMaggio, who I'm just going to spill the beans right now.
He did it, right? It was him.
Yeah, it was. No, it wasn't him. He's
Sweet
the last
boy
person.
Joe,
But
of course not.
when I first started doing this research, the only place I was seeing mention of this was in some fringe material, but now I've read it in a couple pretty reputable sources, including a Washington Post article and a Vanity Fair article. And if they feel like it's worth mentioning, I'm going to mention it. There is a significant chance that they were actually to be married the following week. Remarried. Yeah. This happened on a Saturday. The next weekend, they were supposed to get married. Rumor has it. So there's some things that we do know. We know that that morning, she woke up and she placed a call to her friend Jean Carmen. If you watch any of the 1980s and early 90s docs about the Marilyn death, which there was a hot lot going on then, and we'll talk about that later in terms of resurfaced evidence. Jean Carmen is interviewed in almost all of them. She was a good friend of Marilyn's. In fact, Marilyn called her a few times that day.
And what did she do? She was a model as well, right?
Yes, real pretty lady.
Model, actress, yeah.
It was apparently Jean Carmen's birthday that day. Marilyn told Jean that she had gotten some threatening phone calls over the previous night, like unidentified, no caller ID back then.
No.
Somebody threatening her, saying, leave Bobby alone. Housekeeper shows up at 8 a.m. for her normal workday. She said Marilyn was already awake. The handyman, Norma Jeffries, also shows up around this time, and he's working on the kitchen floor. He's doing some tiling work for her. Okay? Now, depending on which account you read, it is very likely that Marilyn actually fired Eunice Murray on this day. Okay. She'd had it. She knew she was being spied on. She was real sick of it. She fired her. Rumor has it. The previous night, her friend Pat Newcomb, the publicist, had spent the night. Marilyn is in a cranky mood by the time Pat wakes up. Pat wakes up late, like 11 or noon. They actually got in a fight because Newcomb was like, well, what the hell were you doing up so early? You're supposed to be sleeping. And she was talking about how she couldn't sleep. They got in a fight about something or another. Newcomb was going to spend the day hanging out with Marilyn by the pool, but they got in a fight. She took off.
Man, such a hard life. Why did you get up before 11?
I know, it's true.
We were supposed to hang out by the pool all day.
Well, so Newcomb and Marilyn were going to attend a dinner party at Peter Lawford's home that evening. Okay. Patricia Kennedy, not to be confused with Pat Newcomb. Very confusing, right?
So many Lady Pats.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, and Newcomb is different than Newcomb. Yeah, it's
Not Newcomb, like nuclear. Oh my God, did I just do that? This is how fried my brain is. I just said
bad.
Nuclear. Oh my God.
You're all right.
Oh my God.
You got it.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. So they were going to go to this dinner party at Peter Lawford's house, but they got into a fight. Some people will say that the fight actually had nothing to do with Marilyn's sleep patterns, but was actually because Marilyn was really jealous of Pat's closeness with the Kennedys, and also felt that perhaps Pat had been supplying information to the Kennedys, so she's kind of rightfully getting a little bit paranoid because she just had this horrible experience at the lodge, right? And she's like, I know Eunice is spying on me. Pat's supposed to be my friend, but I think she's spying on me too. I'm getting all these threats about the Kennedys, and she's really close with the Kennedys, and basically, screw you, Pat. Pick me or the Kennedys, goddammit. And my guess is that that's actually quite a bit more likely that that's what happened.
I don't love that she's also on a bunch of uppers and downers at the same time, but...
Oh, no. I mean, she's constantly taking sleeping pills and then uppers and chugging them with champagne and, like, lots of bad choices. However, honestly, like, nothing that is that out of the ordinary with what she's been doing for a few years now.
Oh, my God.
And I will argue nothing that was enough to cause her death.
Did you know...
Go ahead.
Did you know that Pat also has a degree in psychology?
Newcomb?
Yeah.
Not
Patricia Newcomb.
I mean, honestly, a psychology degree for a publicist would make sense.
That is true.
That really does make sense.
Just saying.
Yeah. Larry Schiller, a photographer, I've read different accounts of this. Either he spoke to her on the phone or showed up briefly to chat with her. Either had done or was going to do a nude photo shoot from the set of the movie that she'd been fired from and then recently rehired to, Something's Gotta Give. You've seen those photos in the pool, and I thought that those were the photos from that shoot, but maybe I'm mistaking it. Anyhow, they apparently had a brief conversation, had decided to kind of hold off on any further nude shoots because she's still debating, like, do I really want to go back to my reputation as just being a sex object? I'm still, even though I'm not with Arthur Miller anymore, you know, I'm still trying to be taken seriously. Let's hold off on this for right now. And I think part of this is kind of an identity crisis she was having after divorcing Miller. She was really trying to be an intellectual, and now she's like, well, shit, was that really me, or was that just me trying to be his wife, and who am I now? And so I think she's debating, like, do I want to do the nude shoot? Do I not want to do the nude shoot? Do I want to be taken seriously? Do I want to just make money for what I'm already famous for? Blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. She gets a bedside table, which is interesting, delivered to the house, writes a check for it. She also orders some citrus trees that were going to be delivered at this time. So, like, all of these things that are happening around this day, you're hearing a lot of things shaping up that don't sound like the day of things for somebody who's at least planning to kill themselves. Now, we need to be clear here that there are many different kinds of suicide, but in terms of emotionally charged suicides, there are suicides where people plan them out for a long time, right? And, like, you look for those signs, like people start giving away their possessions. Mm-hmm. They're, like, obviously planning for a suicide. Yes. Okay. Now, there are also very fuzzy mind suicides where somebody's under the influence of a lot of shit and they do something stupid because they're not thinking clearly. Right? Now, I think that we can fairly clearly, with evidence, establish that it was not a planned suicide. We can't probably rule out the possibility that emotionally she got into a really shitty place and wanted to die that night. But there were no indications of a planned, orchestrated suicide.
Yeah, I mean, you don't usually order a bunch of citrus trees to be delivered the day that you're going to kill yourself.
Precisely.
What happened with Schiller? What was the deal with that?
Oh, they just had like a short combo, either on the phone or in person, which I've seen both reports of. Sure. Left on good terms. It wasn't bad. She was just kind of like, yeah, let's hold off. I don't know that I want to schedule it right now. Like, I'm not sure that that's the direction I want to be going. Sometimes I think it is. Sometimes I think it isn't. Let me think some more about it. Let's talk more about it.
I don't know about this Lawrence Schiller guy, though, because like after working with Marilyn in whatever amount that he did, he went on to work with O.J. Simpson in 1994 on a book, and then published a book about the John Benet Ramsey murder case as well.
Well, keep in mind, this was many, many moons before that.
But it seems like whatever happened post-Marilyn, he became a bit of an
investigative journalist of sorts?
I think he's exploiting a lot of very sensitive...
Yeah, well, there wasn't a lot of exploitation here. I mean, he was interviewed for some shows about Marilyn stuff, but from what I could tell, there wasn't any giant profit there. Now, there were some people that did, and we're going to talk about that a lot, but a bunch of phone calls. Mm-hmm. Marilyn one of the reasons that Pat was surprised that she was awake is they had partied pretty hard the previous night. They drank a lot, okay, which was why Pat slept in, as most people do when they're hungover. Now, a cure for hangovers at the time was oxygen. This was like a thing people would do. Like,
oh, wow. Okay.
It was common, and it was a common thing for Marilyn to do. But for some reason, Eunice Murray, all of the stories she tells surrounding this day are very difficult to believe because the story changes so frequently, and so much of it is illogical. And here's the first point that we're going to talk about that's very illogical. She later said that early that afternoon, like 2-ish, she contacted Greenson, the psychiatrist, because Marilyn had asked if there was any oxygen in the house. And she was upset by this, except that wasn't an unusual request for Marilyn or for that age. Like it was kind of a common thing. Like, oh, I'm feeling shitty. I'm gonna have some oxygen. Try and get over my hangover because I couldn't sleep. Right?
You ever done the oxygen?
No. Although this is funny, I got a sample with some of my recent face cream of this oxygenation cream that Sam thought was really hilarious, and I told him to put it on his face to oxygenate himself.
Sure. As a sober gentleman, as someone who doesn't partake in that kind of in libations or mind-altering substances, I did in the mid-2000s go to an oxygen bar.
Oh, like those hookah things? Hookahs of oxygen?
Yeah, exactly. You have the nose thing that goes around your head, kind of like in an ambulance, I guess. But yeah, giving yourself...
I never like that. Like the times that I've had to have that, like when I had the babies, never like that feeling. Those two tiny little tubes shoved up your nose. It reminds me of what I would think an alien abduction
So you lied to me. You were on oxygen.
Well, but no, not recreationally or like as a cure for a hangover. No.
But you know what the feeling is. It's
yes, I don't like it. I don't like it.
You get a little bit of...
It's very uncomfortable. It's like tickly.
Okay, I'm talking about the feeling provided by the oxygen. It is beneficial.
I don't know, because anytime I've been on it, I've been on a fuckload of other, like...
That's true. Stronger things.
Things that really supersede oxygen.
Absolutely.
So. Anyhow, Norman Jeffries, working around the house. And in right around 2 o'clock walks a Bobby Kennedy and a Peter Lawford. They send good old Normie and Eunice to the market. Go get some Coca-Colas for yourself.
Sody Paps, okay.
Leave us alone for a bit.
And this is Bobby Kennedy.
This is Bobby Kennedy. Now,
it's a big shot.
Bobby Kennedy never, ever admitted to being in Los Angeles on this day and swore, in fact, that he was in Northern California on this day. However, there are helicopter and plane records, testimonies of multiple police officers, which we'll get into that detail in a little bit from a timeline perspective. He was there. There's no longer a debate about whether he was there. He was in Los Angeles the afternoon of August 4th, 1962. Wow. Unquestionably.
Okay.
Now, he swore he wasn't, and there was some asshole that he was staying with in the San Francisco area that tried to back his alibi until the day he died. But he was definitely there, okay?
Well, wait, is this just a person? This is Robert F. Kennedy. I mean, like who's this asshole? Like his buddy from college? What are we talking about?
Oh, the guy that he was supposedly with in San Francisco area?
Yeah.
Mr. Bates.
Okay.
He was there the whole weekend. This Mr. Bates... Where the fuck is his first name? Really, you can't give me his first name in this article? You fucking assholes, New York Times, sons of bitches. Edit, find on page, find, view, find on page, find. John B. Bates, a San Francisco lawyer.
Oh, okay, so could be an
asshole. He said that Ethel, he is an asshole.
Yeah.
He said that Ethel, Bobby's wife, and several of their children, they had many children, were at Mr. Bates's ranch near San Francisco. There's no way in the world he could have left. No way. And it's funny because in this interview that Anthony Summers does with him for his documentary on Marilyn's death, he says, well, what do you say about like the chief of police? And he names off like 3 other officials in LA that saw Bobby and have testified that Bobby was there that day. Well, they must be mistaken. They're misinformed. No. They say they saw him themselves. Couldn't have been there. But he's literally the only alibi.
Wow.
Now, he was back in the San Francisco area. In fact, he attended church Sunday morning. God, it's a really cool story, but we're going to wait until we get to that point in the timeline. Okay, so we're at 2 o'clock. Bobby shows up. A fight ensues. Now, here's the problem. There are multiple accounts of people hearing tapes because remember, Marilyn's house was bugged.
Super bugged.
There are reports of people hearing these tapes, but these tapes have never surfaced. They were confiscated, supposedly, by the government and destroyed. There is a paper trail of some of these, the owners of, Otash and, in fact, Bernie Spindell, another person that was a famous wiretapper at the time, asking for their tapes back. the government denying the return of those tapes rather than denying the existence of those tapes, which is interesting.
Yeah,
right?
But Spindell worked for the mob. It's weird that he would have the guts to ask for his illegal wiretap
because,
back.
I mean, the mob and the government were... Keep in mind that at this point, the mob got the Kennedys elected.
That is true.
Okay? The line between government and mob is very fuzzy.
Yeah, but also remember that it's the agencies like the FBI and the CIA that were also the enemy of the Kennedys. So
correct, but more the CIA than the FBI.
All right.
The FBI had more tolerance. Really, the CIA was much more pissed. Anyhow, Bobby apparently says, A, stop calling me and my brother. It's frickin' over. She says, screw you, I'm having a press conference. Bobby says, you do something like that, there's more than one way to silence you. She apparently grabs a knife.
Marilyn.
Lawford's there with her, gets her to drop the knife. There are two different versions of this. In one version, Lawford and Bobby leave together. In another version, Bobby leaves briefly, goes and gets one of his security guards, comes back, and then the three of them tussle it out for a while longer. Eventually, later that afternoon, 4-ish, Jeffries and Eunice return from their trip to the market. Marilyn's pretty damn upset at this point. And in fact, they have Greenson come over, does a therapy session. This is around 4:30 in the afternoon.
Was he always doing house calls? Is that how he...
Yes, he did house calls very frequently.
Okay.
During that time, supposedly, Greenson tried to calm her down, said, drink a Coca-Cola. Lots of product placement in this timeline.
Some branded conspiracy here.
Ooh, so much branding.
Wow.
Take a drive to the beach and go for a walk. It's what he wants her to do.
And they shot that as a commercial.
They did, actually, yeah. The last soda that Marilyn drank, it wasn't a Pepsi. It was a Coca-Cola.
Make it your last soda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, this time frame is a little bit fuzzy. When Greenson comes over, though, he asks Eunice Murray to spend the night. So keep in mind, Marilyn has probably fired her earlier in the day. It sounds like Greenson comes over, talks her out of firing Eunice, and says, hey, I'm really worried about you. Clearly, she trusts Greenson because she tells Greenson everything. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Greenson had tapes. Again, put a pin in it. We're coming back to it.
You ever think our psychiatrist is taping us?
I wish he was. I'd love to hear some of the shit I've said over the last decade.
Wouldn't that be great? Yeah.
I'd love it. But no, I don't think he is.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Have you ever seen his file on you? Because I've seen his file on me. It's honestly like 12 completely packed manila file folders that can't hold anymore.
Apparently he writes every time we're done.
Every time. Thorough man he is. Now, a lot of idiots report this incorrectly, that Joe DiMaggio called her that evening, saying that he ended his engagement. It wasn't Joe DiMaggio that called her. It was Joe DiMaggio's son, Joe DiMaggio Jr., who called her. And apparently he had been dating this woman that Marilyn really didn't like. And he said he ended it with her, and Marilyn was super excited about it and said, oh, you're going to be so much happier. You're going to find somebody that's so much better for you. This is great. Good job, Joey. Nice work. According to him, she was very happy. It was a good conversation. Clearly, she decides not to go to the Lawford dinner party, which... Of course she wouldn't. A, she's pissed at Pat Newcomb. B, Lawford was just over with Bobby being a dickhead to her, so clearly she's not going. And this is one of the most frequently quoted Marilyn Monroe last phone call things that you'll hear. Phone records do indicate that she placed a call to Peter Lawford sometime, I've seen conflicting reports, but sometime between 7:30 and 8:30 that evening. All right? Mm-hmm. He says, and keep in mind, this is all according to him. He says that her words were, say goodbye to Pat, say goodbye to the president, and say goodbye to yourself because you're a nice guy. Now, clearly, that quote supports the idea that she was actively killing herself. However, that's according to one guy who, by all accounts, was involved in all of this rigmarole to begin with. Sidney Galaroff, who was Marilyn's hairdresser.
And what was her secondary profession?
This was a he.
Oh, wow. What was the name again?
Said that she called a couple of times and was really upset. She told him that Lawford and Kennedy had been at her house and threatened her. And she was really, really upset about it. Now, this is a very interesting point. 9-ish in the evening, her entertainment lawyer calls. Rudine is his last name. Apparently, Peter Lawford had called Rudine, and Rudine called to check on Marilyn. Eunice said, oh, she's in bed. She's fine. Don't worry about her. She's doing just fine. According to neighbors, sometime between 9:30, 9:45, somewhere in this range, Bobby and Greenson return to the house. There's a bigger fight. Apparently earlier in their altercation, Marilyn had mentioned her diary, and Bobby's screaming and telling her to give him the diary. Where is it? Give me the goddamn diary. A lot of fighting, possibly the sounds of him slapping Marilyn, possibly the sounds of Marilyn slapping him, and then a bit of a struggle, and it sounds like she is injected with something. Like, obviously, you can't hear the sound of an injection, but, like, there's a struggle. She's yelling, and then she gets quiet. Okay, so probably injected her with something to calm her down.
Do you think it was maybe just a higher pitch slide whistle or something? Wouldn't that be, I mean, if that was the injection noise in a cartoon, that would make sense.
It would be the injection noise in a cartoon. No, but according to, again, the people that have heard the wiretaps, there's silence. Here's where things get super confusing. Mm-hmm. When the police arrive on the scene the next morning, the first story that Eunice Murray tells to the first cop on the scene, a gentleman by the name of Jack Clemens, she says, at midnight, I woke up just with a funny feeling, and I saw a light under her door, and I was worried, and her door was locked, so I went outside and I looked in the window, and she wasn't moving. So I called her doctor, and her doctor came over, and he declared her dead at 12:30. Which, A, is weird because the cops weren't called until 4:25 a.m. B, the next officer she talked to on that same day, she gave a completely different timeline to. She said she woke up at 3:30. She saw the phone cord coming out from under her door, which alarmed her, which doesn't make any sense because Marilyn always took her phone with her to bed. She called Greenson and Engelberg, some combination thereof. Engelberg is her internist and Greenson's the psychiatrist. They came over and she was declared dead at 3:50. One day. She couldn't keep her story straight for one freaking day.
Wow.
And according again to Jack Clemens, the first officer on the scene, when he showed up 10 minutes after the police were initially called, like 4:30, 4:45 in the morning, she was washing Marilyn's bed sheets.
I mean, you shouldn't do that.
No, nothing about that makes any sense.
Nah. That's
nothing.
Very strange.
A lot of people think that injection was probably an accidental killing of Marilyn Monroe.
They didn't mean to go that far.
They didn't mean to, but they did, according to this. Here's the challenge. I am going to tell you, I believe in my heart of hearts, after so many pages and hours, images, and listenings, that Bobby Kennedy did not, in fact, kill Marilyn Monroe. I think that Bobby Kennedy died 6 years later thinking he had killed Marilyn Monroe. And I think Bobby Kennedy was definitely there the day of. But in fact, it was not his hand that caused the death of Marilyn Monroe. And this is what I think happened. So backing up to the previous weekend at Cal Neva, if you'll recall, part of the story is that Sam Giancana pulled her aside and said, knock off this shit, stop talking about dumping information from the Kennedys, leave it alone, go home, please stop it. According to Sam's brother and Sam's godson/nephew, in the book Double Cross, highly recommend to everybody, Sam Giancana had actually been hired by the CIA to kill Marilyn Monroe for multiple reasons. People talk about why did Marilyn die, and I'll tell you, a lot of people had a lot of asshole reasons to kill her, but when we're talking about the CIA, we've got multiple things. Number one, the CIA knew from wiretaps that she knew too much, that she was threatening to go public with stuff from the Kennedys. They knew that the Kennedys had created not only a potential situation for them, the Kennedys, that is, but also for national security issues. Because let's be honest, at this point, the CIA was not a big fan of the Kennedys because the Kennedys kind of looked at the CIA almost the same way they looked at the mob in terms of it being an unchecked authority, all right? And they probably weren't wrong. I think the Kennedys were wrong about some things. I don't think they were wrong about that necessarily. Even what we were talking about on Behind the Screams with just all of the crazy information and how little communication there is between different agencies, CIA is definitely guilty of that. But more than anything, they didn't want these national secrets to be released. It had created a lot of liability for them. Though for a while, they felt like they were gathering information that was helpful on maybe ultimately trying to nail the Kennedys. The risk was now outweighing the benefit for them. And so they call because the CIA isn't going to murder Marilyn. The CIA is going to have the mob do it. Just like the CIA isn't going to murder Jack Kennedy, CIA is going to have the mob do it.
Damn.
Okay?
Yeah.
They call Sam Giancana and they say, all right, you got to take her out.
Was he friendly with her, or were they actually friends?
He was friendly with her. I mean, it was like friend of a friend type of deal.
Sure.
Like she was definitely friends with Frank, and Frank was friends with Sam. They hung in the same circles. Like, I don't think he was very brokenhearted to
have to do this
to her.
Yeah.
And in fact, he saw a fabulous opportunity because he said to himself, like, he hated the Kennedys at this point, and specifically Bobby Kennedy, so fucking much. And he thought to himself, what if I can not just complete this and get some brownie points with the CIA, but also sink Bobby Kennedy's ship at the same time by making it look like Bobby did it.
Okay.
So he waited. And in fact, some argue that the conversation he had with her at the Cal Naval Lodge was not actually to try and talk her out of it, because he knew enough about her to know that that conversation would actually probably just further encourage her to go public with the information. That he was actually trying to bait her, and by baiting her, knew that things would escalate very quickly to the point that Bobby would have to get involved, and hoped that Bobby would come in person to talk to her.
Sure enough.
Which is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't do this himself, but he brought in 4 guys. Needles Gianola was coordinating the job. Needles had his sidekick, Muggsy Tortorella. How funny is it that these were actually real people?
I mean...
Needles and Muggsy.
And
and then 2 other
his
professional killers, one from Kansas City and one from Detroit.
Wow.
They flew to LA under orders from Sam to kill Marilyn. But it was all being orchestrated based on the surveillance. So they sat and waited and watched, and sure enough, this was the day that Bobby showed up. They got word from Spindell that Bobby was there, so then they sat and waited. When Bobby came back that evening, and through the wiretap, they heard that she was in some way knocked out. Immediately after that, so we're talking like right around 10 o'clock, they swoop in. They've got a chloroform-covered cloth, cover her mouth, knock her out. This is a little bit morbid and graphic, but they strip her down, and they give her an enema with just a shitload of barbiturates.
Liquid or pill form? I mean, I know that's even grosser to think about. But...
Liquid, but like powder, a bunch of powder dissolved in water.
Sure. Okay.
Barbiturates. And Sam Giancana is just pleased as punch because he instructs them to leave, and to specifically leave the scene, making it very clear that Bobby had been there.
I guess what did they do to show that?
Obviously, they had to be careful about their fingerprints, but they were very careful not to touch anything else, right? Like, they wanted fingerprints of Bobby's to remain there. A crime scene on top of a crime scene. And they only wanted evidence of the first crime scene. They needed to conceal evidence of the second crime scene. Does that kind of make sense?
You know, that's if this is the version that we're trying to believe here.
I believe so strongly that this is what happened. Not only, well, there are a whole lot of reasons I believe this. But, okay, I think what Sam was not anticipating was that Greenson and Eunice were in such, I don't know, either cahoots with or frightened by the Kennedys. So as soon as Eunice discovered the body, which I think happened sometime between 10:30 and midnight, instead of calling the police, which is what Giancana anticipated they would do, and there would just be shitloads of police there immediately, right? And there would be no way the Kennedys would get away with this. Mm-hmm. Instead of that happening, she didn't call the police. She called Greenson. Arguably, she doesn't know if Marilyn's dead, but she calls Greenson because that's her primary concern. She knows that Bobby had been there earlier that day, and she's really concerned that something's going to happen to her because she realizes that the Kennedys are very powerful, okay?
Sure.
So Greenson and Engelberg show up. Now, this is quite possibly the strangest and the only part of the puzzle which I think it can fit, but it's the part of the puzzle that is the most confusing to me and the hardest one to fit in. This story did not come out for 20-some years after Marilyn's death, but it turns out that there was a gentleman by the name of James Hall who says that he was an ambulance driver that was actually called to the scene of Marilyn's death that night.
Ambulance driver, huh? We're going to be talking about a couple of those a little bit later. Just a tease for the movie we're going to
right. Yeah. Forgot about it. Yes, we are.
We already recorded that part.
Okay.
James Hall.
Eunice called Greenson. Greenson called Engelberg. They both started to head over, but Eunice did have a conscience, and she also called the ambulance. So the ambulance arrived before Greenson and Engelberg arrived. They're trying to resuscitate Marilyn, and she is not, in fact, dead at this point. Okay, like she's in real freaking rough shape.
Yeah.
She's in real rough shape because that enema had so many barbiturates. Even if she would have survived, I don't know. Anyhow. So the ambulance driver claims he found her in the guest cottage, not in her bedroom, but in the guest cottage. They were trying to resuscitate her. She was naked. She had no sheet, no blanket, no water glass, no alcohol. She was breathing, but it was very, very shallow. Her pulse was very weak and rapid. She was unconscious. She was unconscious. Her bedside table had pill bottles, but they were all capped. Nothing was empty. He was very, very specific about this.
I mean, what is it being capped? Like, what does that have to do with anything?
Well, if you're popping a bunch of, hold on. I'll tell you what it has to do with it in a minute.
Okay, sure.
So Hall starts doing, CPR, essentially, gets her breathing a little bit better. He got an airway, a clean plastic tube down her throat.
Nasopharyngeal.
His colleague, Leibowitz, ran to the ambulance for resuscitation equipment. Leibowitz was retrieving the stretcher from the ambulance when Greenson shows up and says, "I'm her doctor. Give her positive pressure." So...
Was he her doctor? He was like her psychiatrist.
Well, Psychiatrist is a doctor, technically.
I know, yeah, but you would think that... All right, whatever.
I know. But he got there before Engelberg did, okay? Yeah. The fact that he wasn't necessarily a doctor qualified for this type of thing, this is what Hall says happened. And keep in mind, you started this training, right?
I did, yeah.
EMTs, when they're on site and an actual doctor shows up, they are trained to defer to exactly what the doctor said. They're not going to fight with the doctor.
No, that is true.
Right?
There's like EMT basic 1, basic 2, and the structure was different in different states. But then there's paramedic, and then, of course, doctors, and then specialists.
Now, he doubted very much what Greenson was telling him to do because he's like, I've got a machine here that's doing a great job. Why are we taking her off of this?
Yeah, if she's
But because he's trained
breathing
to defer to the doctor, he removes the resuscitator and attaches another short length of tube to the airway. The doctor pushes on Marilyn's abdomen in the wrong place, which would make sense because he's a psychiatrist, right? Hall blows into the tube. And at this point, based on Hall's description of what happened, I think it could easily swing two ways. Either A, Greenson is terrified and actually trying to resuscitate her but doesn't understand what the fuck he's doing. Or B, he feels like at this point it would be better if she was dead. And I honestly don't know which it is. But according to Hall, okay, listen to this. According to Hall, Greenson takes a brown-colored liquid out of his doctor's bag, which is already filled in a needle, which is kind of strange. Also, what's strange about this is if he was injecting some kind of adrenaline, it reminds me a little bit of the scene in Pulp Fiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. If he was injecting adrenaline, it shouldn't have been brown-colored. However, adrenaline was frequently, like this type of resuscitation medicine would be contained in a brown bottle. So who knows? It was 20 years after this that Hall was recounting it. Okay, so who knows? But he swears that he heard Greenson mutter, "I've got to make a show of this. Christ, let's move. You can work on her in the back of the ambulance."
I've got to make a show of this.
Yep. He thrusts the needle into her chest, but it doesn't go in right. It gets hung up in the bone on one of her ribs.
Yeah.
And instead of pulling it out and trying again, he leans in.
Okay.
Hall recalls watching the muscles in Greenson's face tense up and quiver with the effort he was putting to try and punch the needle through. Okay?
Yeah.
He heard a loud snap as the bone broke. Very shortly after that, Marilyn Monroe passed away.
You have reached the end of side A of this cassette. Turn the tape over to continue.